Hello, and a very warm welcome to all of you who are today watching the session on Tadra Virtual Academy on leadership and social influence. I would like to give a huge vote of thanks to Tadra for inviting me once again. It's a pleasure, privilege, and an honor to be presenting to all of you once again. As we have said before, this is a half an hour session, and we look forward to your comments, your queries in the comment section. They all help us become better. We would also request you to keep all the comments in the comment section respectful, and that is the only house rule that we're observing. So, leadership is one topic that is impacting all of us within organizations, community, or in the family life as well. We all have been asked to step up to challenges, make ourselves better, take difficult calls, make decisions, take risks, evaluate situations, and all of these fall under leadership behaviors. Today's module is dedicated to leadership in the most neuroscientifically and neurobiologically ascertained and researched ways possible. So all the concepts that you will be seeing over here are actually researched, heavily researched, and backed by neurosciences and neurobiology, which is why leadership and social influence to a large extent have become repeatable, verifiable processes and not just cognitive ideas which are good to have and good to know. Do stay clued on for today's program, and I hope that you will find it exceedingly enjoyable and you will take some things back as you're learning lessons. Before I start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Smita Gaurav, and I am a coach, consultant, and a trainer to very many government, semi-government, and private organizations, both in the UAE and in India. I'm the founder and the owner of the social business, which is the Unlimited. And it has been 18 years since I've been working in this field, 12 years in Dubai. Absolute privilege to be presenting to all of you once again. What do we understand by leadership and what do we know of leadership? There are actually places where a lot of myths have been, in place, and we need to break down some of them today as we go into the modules. That's one of those ideas. And the topics that we will be covering today will be as follows. So we will of course be discussing the research-backed leadership concepts and skills, leadership and the science of influence. Again, neurobiology and neurosciences have come to our help over here. Then we talk about how we can lead by example in the 4 different quadrants of directing, participating, coaching, and delegating. And then we will help us and yourself identify the influencing styles and preferences. Finally, we will wind up with the very famous Cialdini's 6 universal principles of influence and persuasion. Do stay clued on. Before we start leadership, we would like to first ask you a simple question. Have you ever gone on a ship? Have you ever sailed in the seas anywhere, especially in the cold region? Or maybe you have seen some clippings on television or some videos of it. In the cold regions in the seas, you'll often find these icebergs floating on the sea. And what we typically see of the iceberg is only 20%, whereas the 80% is submerged below. Leadership and workplace competency, and indeed our own personalities, are much the same. The competency framework is heavily used in assessment centers and in evaluations and in promotions and in, for any kind of organizational promotion or succession planning. We over here have brought this to you to make you understand how this correlates beautifully to the leadership model. What we see at workplace or as leadership behaviors or even as a personality in a social circle or in the family is only the top 20%. At workplace, this is the top 20% of knowledge and skills. This we acquire through training, through experience, through technical expertise, through peer support, etc. These do drive success, yes, and definitely so. But what is excellent is that when these are actually partnered by the below 80% of social roles, self-image, traits, motives, intentions, and temperament, then the results become long-term and short-term, and they become stable as true winning leaders who have had a high degree of influence over other people. So basically what we're trying to say over here is that it's not only our knowledge and skills, which is the 20% of your iceberg, but the 80% of social roles, self image, traits, motives that actually make us the person that we are. And the stronger that we are in this 80%, the more likelihood it is that we will have a higher degree of influence and persuasion in the social circle, at our workplace, and in our private lives. This top 20%, like we said, was a trainable component, so we can be trained for it, we can study for it. The 80% right down below, which constitutes our attitude, values, intentions, motive, traits, social roles, self images, are coachable components, so we can be coached for it. So, leadership is a learned ability, it is not a fixed trait. All of us can become leaders if we are working hard upon it. It's not something which is given to us, and it is not something which is not organic. It is 100% organic, and we can grow it, which is the good news over here. So, after this 80-20% competency framework and how it relates to leadership and influence at workplace, we will now deep dive into the four concepts which are actually shaking up the leadership world and, of course, of influence as well. If I were to ask you, what four things do you respect about your leaders? What would come to your mind? And if we do a little bit of quick think, we'll say high amount of self-worth. We'll say people who do what they say that they will be doing. Okay, people who can inspire us and motivate us. But till date, we have not been able to understand, or as yet, we were not able to understand what was the definitive science behind all of this. How are those people who actually motivate us or have a high degree of self worth? What do they do differently from us? How do they become the people that they do become? And the good news over here, ladies and gentlemen, is this, that all of us can become that person thanks to science again and psychology again. Let me take you through the four concepts that are actually critical to leadership in today's world. So we will start first with the self-determination theory. It's a huge concept, but we will be visiting it very briefly today. And what does self-determination mean? It means the ability to have autonomy, which is freedom, mastery, purpose, and relatedness. If we go into the deep dive of it, we will find out that relatedness actually means not just social status, but a sense of social connection and belonging. They have autonomy, which is creativity, freedom, responsibility, and the ability to make choices and to have choices. They have mastery, so that whatever they do, it's done well, and they are continuously learning and developing themselves at all levels. They have purpose, which needs altruism, a sense of direction, a reason for living, if you will. All of these constitute the intrinsic motivation for a leader, which is called the ramp. Leaders have cultivated this either through study or through experience or through wisdom gained through life. But at the same time, they're also able to cultivate this for you and for the people who are around them, which is the good news. So when you talk about a leader is a person who actually scores a very high score on all the ramp, which is relatedness, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, and helps us to achieve those personal benchmarks as well. Once when they do this, the influence of the leadership obviously expands. The circle of influence will go a lot bigger when they are high on all of this. Any leader who does not know his stuff, who is not committed to personal development, will have a little less impact on you. Any leader who is not connected to you in so many ways will have less impact on you. Any leader who is not creative enough, does not make the right choices, does not act from a sense of responsibility, will have a little less impact on us. That is human psychology. So also purpose. If he has less of purpose, if his reasons, if his why is not strong enough in life, why he does things what he does, it will not have enough impact on you to follow him and to look up to him. So influence is actually just another word for the amount of respect that we can gain from people. And influence is just another word for the amount of regard and positive admiration that we can have from people. So in this sense, we are recalibrating the word influence. It is not about the ability to manipulate and to control, but to be ability to have and to gather enough regard, admiration, and respect from people for genuine worth that you have, which is again coming through the ramp model over here. So we understood the self-determination theory is important to us. Let's now go to the next one, which is the shame theory. Shame theory has had a couple of good articles on the Harvard Business Review, and I would strongly recommend, highly recommend that you probably would go and take a peek into it. It's going to help you a lot. Why is shame so important into organizations? Because we realize that even if people are winning, they're acting out of shame. And if shame is your driver for winning, it is not right winning, it is just called a coping mechanism. It's a defense mechanism, it is an ego protection. So, leaders who are genuine leaders are not people who are into ego protection. They are not into, shielding their sense of self from any vulnerability. They do not operate from shame. They operate from positive motivation, which is right the opposite of shame. And why is shame a wrong thing to have? Because it creates a lot of toxic culture at your workplace. It gives rise to false personal goals, which means that we want total aggrandization. We want to look good into other people's eyes. We want to have more followers. We want to have better social media handles. And while there's no harm in having this, it is actually a goal which is a false goal if it is only being done because you do not currently feel good enough about yourself. It also causes us to become very harsh leaders because people who are operating from shame are unable to lend themselves any amount of compassion. This is a huge body of work, and psychology and organizational psychology have heavily stressed this in current days. We can, of course, only dip our feet into it and give you an understanding of it that people who are harsh with themselves or lack in compassion to themselves also lack in compassion to other people. So, the whole idea over here is that the people who've been able to work on their shame, become less harsh upon themselves, have more self compassion, have higher degrees of influence. Their sphere of influence becomes automatically much bigger. So, shame and influence have inverse relationship because shame means an automatic sense of low self worth. And anybody who's having a low sense of self worth cannot have a high degree of influence. So that is a little about of shame, but let us understand what does neuroscience and neurobiology have got to do with this. And this is where we will go a little deeper into these concepts. As per the latest research in psychology, neuroscience, and neurobiology, which are all overlapping now these days, we have three body states, and those body states are as follows. We have the window of tolerance. In the window of tolerance, when our body is relaxed, we are open, we are grounded, we are curious, we are present, we are appreciative, and we can regulate our own emotions, which is highly important. But when we are in the hyperarousal state, we are anxiety driven, we are overwhelmed, we are in the fight or the flight, so we are always wanting to have conflict or wanting to run away from conflict. We are hypervigilant, so we are always looking around for threat and for danger, and we are often anger driven. This is the hyperarousal state of your body. And then we have the hypoarousal. In the hypoarousal, we have the whole body going into shutdown, freeze, or collapse, numb, and shame. So if you ever heard yourself, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just doing this on autopilot, I'm not able to feel anything, I'm just carrying on one day after the other, you're probably in the shutdown, freeze, collapse, numb place. Often this time is a place of shame because even though you want to do those things, your body simply does not allow you to do so. Till date, we had this concept about leadership and people management that people's minds have to be managed. But right now, we understand that before your mind starts thinking about what to give as a response, your body has already decided. So your mind and the body are the same, okay? And your body first will decide what responses you will give depending upon which body state you are in, whether you're in hyperarousal or in the window of tolerance and the hypoarousal. How does this correlate to leadership? This is very, very interesting. A good leader is a person who's able to move in between these three states easily. Please remember, we are not saying that hypoarousal is bad or hypoarousal is bad. They both are required by your body either to step up to a challenge or to rest, relax, and to just be by yourself. At the same time, it is also not possible for us to be in the window of tolerance all the time. But leaders, effective leaders, are people who are able to move from one state to the other state easily and without distress. They can use all the resources. When they need to be anxious, they will be anxious, but they'll come back to the window of tolerance, open, grounded, present, curious. When they need to relax and shut down, they will do so, but again come back to the present window of tolerance again. So the movement is easy, and this is what we probably is also one of the definitions of psychological flexibility. There are other models as well that stress psychological flexibility. This is the neuroscience and the neurobiology backed one. The second bit is this, that when the leader is in the window of tolerance, he is effectively able to increase the size of the window of tolerance, which is to say that he can actually move the window of tolerance a little more. He is able to find lesser times where he gets into hyperarousal and hyperarousal. And more often, he's in the calm, centered, curious place. That is what we all expect of our leaders, right? For them to be calm, collected, curious, present moment, and grounded, also flexible. Both hypoarousal and hyperarousal have also been linked, like I said, to rigidity. So, window of tolerance becomes the window of psychological flexibility. It's also not advisable for leaders to be stuck at any one place, either hyper or hypoarousal. Both of them are not recommended. And when the leaders are in the window of tolerance for a longer amount of time, that is the time when they start ensuring that we feel safe around them, psychologically safe. And trust me, ladies and gentlemen, when you feel psychologically safe, it is not your mind which is telling you that. Your bodies will relax around that person. Your nervous system will respond well to their nervous system. So, as parents, as colleagues, as community leaders, or members of the community, if you really want to have a great relationship with anybody or you want to lead, please realize that your body or your face or your tone of voice are all giving out signals which we call body language in soft parlance, and the other person is interpreting that through his nervous system, and therefore he will accordingly open up to you or not, depending upon how safe he feels around you. And that brings us to the next concept of psychological safety. So, psychological safety is important because the more psychologically safe a person feels around you, the higher the degree of influence. Finally, we come to the fourth concept, which is PsyCap. If you will go on to the earlier videos of Tadra, I think we have covered PsyCap in one of the other topics as well. But PsyCap basically stands for psychological capital, wherein it is constituting of hope, efficacy, resilience, and optimism. Any leader is able to inspire hope in you and give hope to himself. He has efficacy, which means that he can actually find out challenges that he can work through and overcome those challenges and complete a task. He has resilience, and this ties up beautifully to the window of tolerance. Anybody whose resilience will be able to move from one window to the other easily. That is the best definition of resilience. And he has optimism around situations which are challenging or non challenging. So, not only are they able to cultivate this in themselves, but they also are able to cultivate this in the people around this. And these are again very cutting edge positive psychology interventions that are happening at workplace. It's great to bring all these things to you. I'm really enjoying this. Finally, we have the last and the most important bit in this. Brené Brown is the leading researcher on vulnerability and leadership. Over years and years of research, she has collected a huge body of work which is making sweeping changes at our workplace and in our personal life. And she says that in an armored leadership environment where we use shame, blame, people are afraid, fear is the currency, which is what we have popularly been, propounding and talking about, that a leader should be strong and armored, but a leader who's strong and armored also cultivates a lot of shame, blame, and fear around his people, which reduces psychological safety, which reduces psychological flexibility, and therefore reduces the circle of influence as well. In a daring leadership, however, empathy, self compassion are taught, modeled, and expected, and when leaders do this, they actually increase their circle of influence. Let us now discuss briefly the situational leadership styles. So, we have four situational leadership styles, And these styles are delegating, supporting, coaching, and directing, as you can see. In the next couple of slides, we will go through all of them and we will see how to use them and when to use them. Let us first start with the delegating style. In the delegating leadership, what we see is that the people who are working around you or under you are highly competent people and highly committed people, in which case they need very little supervision. And so the leader turns over the control, provides the big picture, lets the individual make all the task related decisions, and only monitors activities or suggests feedback if required. And this can only happen when the individual is performing consistently, autonomously, and with a high sense of will and high sense of skill. He keeps all the stakeholders informed and shares all the good news and the bad news with an open feedback loop with his co-workers, colleagues, and his seniors. In the supporting leadership style, the leader must participate and support the follower. This is a very follower driven, relationship focused stage. Why is that so? Because the competence is moderately high and it's not completely committed a place for the employees, slightly variable commitment. So, in which case, a lot of supporting, encouraging, motivating, etc., is required. The leader must now focus less on the task and more upon the relationship. And he does need to continue to check to make sure that the work is being done at required levels. Then we have the coaching leadership and when to use. Of course, we've spoken so much about coaching, and organizations are rife with coaching models. Any kind of coaching model that we have been using is typically used over here when there is a low sense of competence and low commitment. Okay, so low skill and low will. Okay, when this is happening, then immense amount of coaching is required. This is a leader driven stage, yes, but a coaching relationship has to be established with the coachee and between the coach as well. The leader needs to focus on tasks which can require significant commitment of time. The focus can now expand to the developing of relationships with the employee, building on the trust that has begun to develop, and the encouragement that has been demonstrated. Again, the leader needs to spend significant time listening and offering advice. So, coaching is not telling, so we will only suggest, offer advice, and let the person find a sense of agency. This again goes back to the ramp model where we let them find some autonomy, some amount of mastery, some amount of purpose, and some amount of relatedness. So, the ramp model is perfectly overlapping with this particular slide. The goal over here is to engage the follower so that they can develop to the next level. There is less telling and more suggesting, like I said before, which leads to more encouragement and acting as a coach. When do we do this? When the follower has developed some competence along with some improved commitment, but not completely there. The follower is not totally confident in their abilities, but is getting there. Again, this has a wonderful overlap with the PSYCAP model, where we are talking about how leaders can encourage hope, efficacy, resilience, and optimism. And all of those factors come in beautifully over here because efficacy is the ability to get a task done by believing in your own abilities and own self-definition. And hope and optimism come whenever you encounter a problem or obstacle that you want to overcome. Right? And so the entire hero model, that is hope, efficacy, optimism and resilience, help the coachee to get over the current obstacles that he's facing at his workplace. And then we have the directing leadership. As a leader, we need to pay high attention to the tasks rather than the relationship at this stage. With the direct report, as a relationship does not exist as yet, which is basically simply saying that the people over here are high on will but low on skill, high on commitment but low on competence. And the leader must spend much more time working with the employee, offering clear instructions and regular follow up. It's all about encouraging and motivating at this point, celebrating positive results, and offering suggestions, remedial actions for less positive results. This is again a very, very leader driven stage. The idea is to motivate the followers to rise to the next level of their ability. Again, PsyCap and ramp model again are being spoken over here. And over here, we will have to stress the fact that only a self compassionate leader can look into these people and help them develop. A shame led leadership will not be able to help them and therefore will lose their influence. So, this is all about how the ability to influence is overlapping with the earlier models that we spoke about. The follower in this case, nearly all new employees need a more directive style of leadership. They are very formative with little or no experience in their new roles. In the formative stages, the follower is characterized by low competence but a high sense of commitment. The inability to comply with possible feelings of insecurity. Resilience, again, that comes over here. So we see finally that all of these situational models, there's no either or. You can probably go from one place to the other with your employees. It is not that one particular employee will always be directed or always be supported or always be coached. It is perfectly possible that you have a combination of all of these things going with all of your employees, and that is going to increase our circle of influence. So we have to decide that what is going to work well with which employee, and that is where situational leadership comes in. So situational leadership basically helps us understand how we can use our influence adequately at the right time, at the right place, and for the right reason. This is the leadership model that we have discussed. And so far, we have discussed the four factors of ramp, shame, psychological safety, and of course, PsyCap with respect to leadership. We have also discussed the iceberg model, where the 80-20 principle is also coming in handy. And now we have discussed these four quadrants of directing, supporting, delegating, and coaching. Now we come to the six principles of influence and persuasion by Cialdini. Cialdini's book is a wonderful book, highly recommended it again to all of you. The first principle of persuasion states that human beings are wired to return favors and pay back debts. They treat us as they have treated, they want to be treated, and they treat us as they have received from us. And the huge point over here that psychology comes to tell us is that people feel obliged to return favors by offering discounts or favors that they have taken from you. Psychology explains this by stressing that humans simply hate to feel indebted to other people and they would like to get free of that sense of indebtedness, and therefore reciprocity is very important, or reciprocal relationships are important. So people who are wanting a high degree of influence and persuasion believe in having reciprocal relationships. They give back and they also know that they have given you something, so you can also reciprocate when you have the time to. The other one is commitment. People want their beliefs to be consistent with their values. The principle of commitment declares that humans have a deep need to be seen as consistent. When we do not do what we say, or we do not say what we do, we are actually called what we call, cognitive dissonance, or cognitively dissonant people. As such, when once we have publicly committed to something or someone, we are much more likely to go through and deliver on that commitment. Hence, consistency or cognitive non-dissonance. From a psychological perspective, this can be explained by the fact that people have aligned commitment with their self-image. Marketers, of course, have figured out how to use Cialdini's second principle to obtain greater conversion. So you want to be consistent with what you have said and do what you have said. Social proof, there's nothing like feeling validated based on what others are doing. Cialdini defines social proof as people doing what they observe other people doing. It's safety in numbers. Many a times you go into a store, into a mall, and you find that there are a couple of people there, and then you feel encouraged to walk in. You go into a restaurant, nobody's sitting, and your mind says that's bad news, I'm not going in. You see a social media handle that has plenty of followers, and you say, okay, this person has social proof. That is how social proof works. And we are even more influenced by this principle if we are unsure of ourselves or the people we observe are similar to us. Authority, you will obey me. Ever wonder why we have a tendency to obey authority figures? Even if they are objectionable and asked to commit objectionable acts, it's human nature. Great many political crimes and cultural crimes have been committed in the name of authority. It could either be a uniform or a designation. Any of these things reinforce authority, and at that place, the human cognition automatically lessens. We stop thinking about our decisions because we believe that the people who are in the know have taken the decision for us, and we should just go forth with it mindlessly. This is actually a great place where one needs to exercise a word of caution. You can see this happening in commercials all the time when they use doctors for their ad campaigns or any other authority figure who has some amount of backing in one way or the other. Liking, the more you like someone, the more you'll be persuaded by them. In my many years of training and coaching, many people have come to me with this lament that no matter what good work you do, things always go to the person who has liked the more. And indeed, HR and all research tells us that only that 65% of all our work is viewed through the lens of likability or non-likability. So if people are projecting themselves and they're likable people, they're more likely to be visible. And only the remaining 35%, it seems, is hard work. And that's actually not so great news. But that's how brain biases work. We are hardwired for brain biases, and therefore, the fundamental leadership value is to be able to understand the nature of your brain biases because we all have them and sidestep them. So, what does it matter if you like someone? According to Cialdini, it affects the chances of you being influenced by that individual. Liking is based on sharing something similar or more superficial interest, like physical attractiveness. It could be a mutual dislike for somebody else, it could be a mutual like for something. This principle can be applied to conversions in the following way. A company that wants to boost conversion rates should create a great About Us page. If you want to have a great sales, you should talk a little about yourself. That is how likability works, even in interviews, in promotions, unfortunately, yes, that's also a factor. So, influence and persuasion with leadership has got a lot to do with likability. Scarcity, when you believe that something is in short supply, you want it more. Leaders, of course, need to understand this principle a little more carefully because scarcity does not mean that you make yourself invisible altogether. It means that being there at some times and sometimes not at all. And that is where a person starts valuing you because if you're too much in rotation, if you're a circulating currency all the time, people tend to lose an understanding of how important you are, your influence and persuasion skill automatically reduces. We are likelier to purchase something if we are informed that it's the last one or a special deal that will soon expire. That's human nature again. So these are the 6 principles of influence and persuasion by Cialdini. I hope that all of these concepts, ideas, and the science behind it has made sense to you. I hope that you will carry this back to your workplace, at your homes and your communities, and spread the word around. We thank you all for being here with us. It's a great opportunity to present great concepts to you, and a big vote of thanks to Tadra Virtual Academy once again. Have a great day. Bye bye for now. See you.